Thank you very much, Ignaz, and thank you very much to Adrian and his group of people, and also I think the Swiss National Fund to invite us and be so generous. I mean, that's not a given these days. Right, Florentine Besson née Ridoux. I have finally stepped into the focus of a woman in my lecture, and the birth of the modern piston valve trumpet. The origin of the modern piston valve B-flat trumpet is often attributed to F. Besson in Paris, and in the United States, statements such as most modern trumpets were originally copied from the French Besson and were manufactured from about 1885 are commonplace. French Besson trumpets were introduced to the United States by symphony orchestra players from Europe in the late 19th century and held a monopoly until important American makers such as Vincent Buck and Alden Bench started to copy them in the mid-1920s. Madame Florentine Besson, née Ridoux, was at the helm of the Paris enterprise after her husband sought a legal separation from her to avoid litigations with Adolphe Sax, and in 1858, to accomplish this goal, Gustave put all his French assets into Florentine's name and renamed the firm F. Besson, while retreating to London to conduct his own business. So goes the well-known story. Florentine Mélanie Ridoux was born in Paris in 1829 and aged only 18, married Gustave Auguste Besson in October 1847. The couple had 4 children, 3 daughters and 1 son, all born in Paris between 1848 and 1860. After Gustave Besson's death in 1875 actually, 1874 is what you find in the literature. There are new documents that show that it was actually 1875. Madame Besson also took over her husband's business in London and died only 2 years later in 1877, not yet 50 years of age. The second oldest daughter, Marthe Josephine, continued both the Paris and London enterprises after her mother's death, and she was followed in the business by her own daughter, Meha, who carried on in the female leadership in the 3rd generation. Considering the young age at which Florentine married Gustave, 9 years her senior, it is very likely that she trained with her husband, helping him in many aspects of instrument making in the small premises at 7 Rue Trois Couronnes, where the Bessons lived and worked. This is not terribly responsive, is it? Already prior to the legal separation and in preparation to the Great Exhibition in London in 1851, the Bessons embarked on a dual resident lifestyle that involved traveling independently from each other. And that also justifies that I swap from English to French and back to English pronunciation of the name. So please bear with me. Documents show that Florentine considered herself to be an instrument maker in her own right as early as 1851. To the laptop, okay. Yeah. Okay. On the 27th of October of that year, 1851, less than 2 weeks after the Great Exhibition closed, Florentine Mélanie Besson arrived at the English port of Folkestone, traveling from Boulogne in France by herself. Her profession is listed as fabricante d'instruments. More than likely, she was en route to London to help her husband wrap up matters of the exhibition. However, in those instances in which she is mentioned together with her husband, for example, in the birth certificates of their 4 children and in English census records, her profession is usually not mentioned. For example, the English census of 1871 listed the Besson family as at 198 Euston Road in London, giving Gustave's profession as musical instrument maker master, while Florentine's profession is not mentioned. However, both daughters, Cécile, aged 22, and Marthe, aged 18, are described as assistant to the instrument maker, their father. The fact that the daughters were assisting Gustave in London in their late teens and early 20s appears to confirm retrospectively that Florentine indeed had also worked with Gustave in the early years of their marriage in a traditional family business. Only at her death in 1877, Florentine Ridoux, wife of the late Gustave Besson, is again officially listed as a fabricante d'instruments de musique. Florentine Besson Ridoux's French patents from 1867 and 1874. 20 years ago, Niles Eldridge drew our attention to the importance of Madame Florentine Besson, née Ridoux, as a knowledgeable writer of the early history of the Périnée valve, and an inventor in her own right. Madame Besson submitted 2 French patents in 1867 and 1874, and in both patents, she is described as fabricante d'instruments de musique, and she submitted the documents in person. The 1874 patent was also issued as a British patent, testifying to Madame Besson's international standing. Of course, it is hard to assess how much input there might have been from other people, especially Gustave Besson, in developing these patents. However, scrutinizing the text of the 1874 patent, in which many of Gustave's designs are summarized, while some are singled out as Florentine's own inventions, brevets personnels, appears to make a strong case for her personal involvement. The birth of the modern piston valve trumpet and Florentine Besson's 1867 patent with amendments from 1872. The 1867 patent with its amendments from 1872 shows how Florentine developed the modern trumpet in a step-by-step process from the cornet and the military natural trumpet. Her first step was a trompette cornet in 4-foot C with shanks for B natural, A, B flat, very important, A flat, and additional shorter tuning slides for D natural, in other words, the high D trumpet, and D flat. The purpose of the trumpet cornet was to improve the military natural trumpet, the trompette d'ordinaire, so that the artist could play easily in the most ungrateful keys. Florentine realized her goal by creating a new high trumpet with 3 valves, nouvelle trompette aiguë à 3 pistons, in unison with the cornet. Like the cornet, it had removable shanks and crooks for different tonalities. The shanks and crooks, very important, could either be cylindrical and of a wider initial diameter for a trumpet mouthpiece, or more conical with a narrow receiver for a cornet mouthpiece. In the latter case, the cornetist could use their accustomed mouthpieces and yet produce a timbre similar to the military natural trumpet, also in the text used as trompette d'harmonie, which is usually the military trumpet with tuning slide. However, the body shape of Florentine Besson's trompette cornet from 1867 was distinctly different from the military natural trumpet, and it did not cover its most common keys, nor fully resemble its sound. Madame Besson, therefore, amended the patent in 1872 and focused on a more obvious connection between the trompette d'ordonnance and the trompette à piston. To achieve this goal, she gave the trompette à piston the same body shape, lead pipe, and bell profile as the trompette d'ordonnance, and illustrated both side by side. The keys of the piston valve trumpet were now the same as those of the military natural trumpet, 6-foot F, E natural, E flat, and 7-foot D. Other tonalities, such as 8-foot C, so a whole octave lower than what we were talking about earlier, were achieved with alternative main tuning slides, and fine tuning was possible, like in the trompette d'ordonnance or trompette d'harmonie, with a second tuning slide at the back bow. Most importantly, the 1872 amendment included a whole new family of single-loop trumpets in various sizes of a long form. Une famille de trompettes de nouveau genre que j'appellerai à forme longue. The purpose of this design, which I will show in a moment, was to place the tuning slide at the front bow rather than the back bow to avoid collision with the player's chin, a drawback of the previous trumpet design, and of course also the English slide trumpet. Looks familiar? Florentine Besson's long-form trumpets encapsulate the entire history of the modern piston valve trumpet. Figure 1 illustrates a trumpet in low G that could also be played in A flat with a shorter main tuning slide and in lower keys of the military trumpet, including 6-foot F, by inserting the appropriate shanks or crooks at the receiver. So this is a trumpet that has still removable shanks and crooks at the lead pipe. Figure 2 shows a trumpet in 4-foot C that could also be played in B natural, B flat, A and A flat, with additional longer shanks and crooks at the receiver. Figure 3 illustrates a trumpet in high E flat, an octave higher than the military natural trumpet, which could be played with with appropriate shanks and crooks, with E as E natural, and with a shorter tuning slide also, as D natural, as D natural, D flat, and 4-foot C with the appropriate shanks and crooks. So this would again be the high D trumpet. All these instruments retained the removable shank and crook system with the option to use either a trumpet or a cornet mouthpiece. Conclusion. Niles Eldridge has called this drawing the Rosetta Stone of modern trumpet design. That is a statement that was sent to me in an email, so he hasn't actually published anything about this, but he is certainly aware of the importance of this amendment. And there can be absolutely no doubt of its wide-ranging significance, especially of Figure 2, which in 1872 includes the modern C and B-flat trumpets as they have endured unchanged almost into our modern times. The drawing is remarkable in a number of ways. First, the patent, even though Gustave Besson likely had some influence, was clearly submitted by and granted to Florentine Besson, née Ridoux, the first of 3 generations of women at the helm of the Besson firm. Second, it illustrates that the modern B-flat trumpet grew out of the desire to preserve the heroic trumpet sound of the military natural trumpet, the trompette d'ordonnance, in an instrument that was easier to play for the cornetist. And third, it proves that Besson was indeed at the forefront of modern trumpet development as early as 1872, predating general estimates by about a decade and confirming that this firm's seminal role in the history of the modern trumpet is indeed justified. In the United States, the trumpet was long associated with orchestral players, and it would take some cornetists, among them none other than Louis Armstrong, until the late 1920s to convince them to switch to the trumpet. And also, I think, particularly in Louis Armstrong's case, to have the courage to step into this realm of conservatory-trained trumpeters. Like French cornetists half a century earlier, Armstrong's transition was aided by an instrument that was in effect a trompette-cornet hybrid, the Harry B.J. trumpet cornet with exchangeable lead pipe for trumpet or cornet mouthpiece. And in the picture, you barely see it. The instrument is actually lying on the floor, and if you strain your eyesight a little bit more, you can actually see a second lead pipe leaning into the back bow. Ultimately, the modern B-flat French Besson trumpet was aggressively promoted by, and then also copied by, American orchestra players such as Vincent Buck, setting new standards in the United States, eventually for all kinds of musical genres in which the trumpet was involved. Thank you.